Hello, welcome back to the temple. We tried to place new stones as much as we can. Some days we might have a little bit lesser of a vision, but nevertheless we still try to continue in building this place and keeping it nice and tidying it up and keeping it clean, letting the spiritual energies flow and whatnot. But today will be the first part of the Esoteric Seven series. Let's get into it. So in the last video, we talked about the Trinity and the nature of the three while skimming over different aspects of the seven. If you haven't seen the introductory video yet, then I recommend you do so in order to have a better understanding and sense of clarity with regard to this one. We closed the last video discussing the mysteries, using water as an example, of the three in relation to the one, to each of them, or as one rather, including the seven subplanes as well, which breaks it down particularly to the solid, liquid, and gas forms. Or for water, it would be, water, vapor, and ice, as we described. To derive a sort of sense perception to the evolutionary process of consciousness relative to the nature of God, and especially spirit to matter and matter back to spirit again. We also began to incorporate some of the mystery traditions, i.e. Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Grecian, especially the Eleusinian. And now we will get into the main objective of this series, which is the understanding of the ageless wisdom through the lens of the Esoteric Seven, that is. From the ineffable source and the great breath of God, there came the law of polarity. The inhalation was of a positive polarity, the exhalation was of a negative, but nevertheless the first ray of willpower to know yielded results in the third ray of active intelligence and adaptability. But it was the child born of the second ray belonging to love wisdom that thus linked the chain of the three and balanced the pairs of opposites. So either way you look at it, the inhalation could have been the positive polarity on the other hand, and the exhalation could have been the negative polarity. But from the first and the third, there came the second, not the other way around. Not the first and the second came the third. The first was a spirit. The third was a matter, and in between the relationship between the inhalation spirit and exhalation matter was the linking chain of the first three. The second ray of love, wisdom, the child. Who balanced the pairs of opposites. So at this point, the positive polarity of the first ray and the negative polarity of the third became flipped or differentiated. And for the spiritual, because the spiritual fire of the father resulted in the physical life of the mother or mother matter. And the watery soul and intuition with wisdom of the mother matter became adapted and thus embodied the physical form of the son or the child. Thus, the son polarizes the father and mother while existing at the very center of them both. Above the crown of the head, which we call the seventh plane of Adi, the divine, the three exist eternally as one. But while the son is centered to the father and mother, as we discussed, he too goes through several sub-levels of change. From the seventh, sixth, and fifth ethers of the subplane, his light fire begins to decrease, and the further away from himself, his center, the further away it radiates, the more it becomes like that of a gas. So from the seventh ether, sixth ether, and fifth ether, he begins moving away from the center, and it slowly becomes like that of the fifth or the fourth subplane, which is gas. becomes gaseous. Okay, so while this sulfuric form, this newly sulfuric form, still contains active creative power and fire energy, it begins to cool and thus condense itself the further away it radiates. So it continues even further along its journey of radiation, thus resulting in a watery, semi-cool mercurial state, which is like a balance between hot and cold. But furthermore, as it continues onward and outward of its radiation, it eventually loses its heat completely, resulting in a hardened physical shell, rather like that of salt, or quite corresponding to the planet Pluto in relation to our sun. While this may seem alarming and even daring at first, this is simply a natural process which will soon pave the way to great illumination. You see, when the fire finally becomes far away enough from itself, its center, as the sun, the second love wisdom, it passes through the various subplanes, through the astral, the gas, the water, and physical, as discussed, so that it may finally solidify, crystallize, and as discussed in the previous video, shatter itself into billions upon billions of fragments of light, all from itself, all to reach greater states of conscious and physical evolution, as well as achieve mitosis of the soul, which is breaking away from the center cell, shattering it to become a new cell, a new center of consciousness and thought. So while on one side, the child's light radiates to the upper and outer regions of its father, returning to that involutionary journey, that sense of self and complete identity, individualization, and sovereignty, it flips the positive pole of the first ray into the negative. And while the child of fire permeated and scoured the other side, the material plane, the lower inner regions of its mother of the third ray intelligence, her dark universal womb of creation, it thus reached a breaking point of frozen crystallization, and had to shatter according to her great universal law of the cosmos, because she represents the cycles, the times, the circles, the magnetism, and such. She too, though, would become his group realization instead of the individuation. His sense of purpose according to the greater good or the whole of the all, and would henceforth shift into a more positive polarity. So from the dark womb of the universe and the cycles of life and death, it would thus shift into a more positive direction, a sense of wholeness, of unity and oneness, apart from just the sense of self, which once belonged to the fire of the unknown father. So it flips. The polarities do. So the child is like the center of a magnet, I guess you could say. It sees the father and mother to be like that of the north and south poles, northern and southern. And while he pursues his spirit of wisdom and love granted by his South Polian mother, while using his material embodiment of the law and will achieved by the realization of the unknown father belonging to the northern pole, he thus flips the poles and reaches both balance and equilibrium. The child is ever on the journey to realize its hidden father, its own I am presence, the I am, the sense of a higher power and most ancient of days, and all the way back to the furthest regions of the past. The Alpha, its Alpha beginnings, the ages of mystery, mystical libraries of wisdom, Akashic databases of preserved knowledge, as well as the great revelation contained therein. But it is ever so his journey to redeem the mother, his mother, who is the unmanifest, the omega of future possibility, the descent of the highest of intelligence into the lowest of material reality, the one and only true great she, the only one and true great sacrifice of life, love, and light. For she alone bears the Great Spirit, and she alone carries us to and fro from heaven through her streams of light and life energy. We have to redeem her from matter itself. So from the space above the atmi, or crown, we're relating this now to the levels of spirit to that of the chakras. From the space above the atmi or crown, the projecting trinity, which is one, broke its crystal body, resulting in both an opening and outpouring. Thus, the crown itself was established. The higher spiritual mind connected within the ether, or key, earth goddess of the heart, or hearth. Earth and heart are like hearth, to the universal ether. So this is what connected the key, the Mesopotamian goddess of the earth, to the heavens, which is universal ether. The space above the crown was charged with positive light energy, but its results were in the physical production of Kether, the negative duality which had to manifest. So it broke through, thus resulting in the flipping of the poles and the production of the third, the Bina, also of the Kabbalistic tree, understanding, the actual understanding. And this is what bore the results of the second crown of wisdom, the Chokmah, who was to equilibrate the first and the third and make them agree. So I know that's a lot to take in, but we also have other cultures and mysteries. We also have the Eleusinian mysteries. Zeus, for instance, resides on Mount Olympus. And where is Mount Olympus? Mount Olympus is right here, or at least right somewhere in here. Zeus remains in Mount Olympus as long as he wills it. But he also has a brother. And his brother Hades is simply the opposite polarity of himself. So his brother Hades broke through the realm of Olympus and descended down into the underworld, which would be our lower chakras, our lower three at least. And there he resides. There Hades resides to this day. So Zeus remains at our seventh chakra. Hades remains at our first chakra, our root. But here's the secret. Here's the mystery. Persephone, the goddess of, actually the daughter of the goddess of the cycles of nature and the seasons and time, as well as time, descended with her mother because she and her mother can travel between the heavenly place, the earthly or heart place center, as well as the underworld. So while her and her mother were on a journey, or on a mission to see the seasons and harvesting and all that stuff, Persephone was tempted by the pomegranate, which is a very symbolic fruit, especially that related to the sexual passion. So she bit into it, and then Hades was able to kidnap her and take her down, you guessed it, into the underworld, which is our lower sexual body. And he contained her for many a day, which is like the retention and the containing of sexual matter without releasing it. And Zeus did not care. He did not care at all. He did not worry himself with the affairs of the lower regions. But Demeter, her mother, Persephone's mother, finally fought Zeus and threatened to never let the plants and the flowers grow ever again on planet Earth unless Hades release her daughter from the underworld. So the release would be like the spilling of the cup of Hermes. So Zeus finally had to make a deal with her, so the seasons and the time and all that belonging to his usurped father, that is, would not just completely shatter and just destroy life and humanity. So he said, okay, then Hades is to release her daughter for a time on Earth, and she can also go to Olympus if she wishes. She can go back to Earth if she wishes, but she also must spend a time in the underworld, which I'm guessing, at least intuitively, would be the time of winter. So she alone is the one being, the goddess, who can traverse the different realms. Just like, as before stated, the mother is the one, the spirit, the Holy Spirit, who made the great sacrifice into matter. And she also goes through the various streams. She is the stream of light and life that travels from the three planes, the heavenly, the earthly, and the underworld plane. For further evidence, we also have the Mesopotamian tradition. Inanna, or Ishtar, the goddess of Venus, the morning star, also the daughter of Anu, the sky god, who was the husband to Ki, Earth. She also had the ability to traverse the different realms, the underworld, the above world, and the heavens. And it is best seen in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where she sees a mortal man on Earth and decides to descend down and to attempt to romance him and make him hers, rather. But out of his own ignorance and folly, as most men really are, as we may know it, he declines this and proclaims himself to be better than gods and goddesses. So this angers her, and she goes back up from Earth, the heart. It hurts her heart. She moves back up to Earth, to heaven, Anu, which is where Anu lives, and demands that her father seduce the man Gilgamesh. He refuses. Her father refuses, and then she threatens him that if he does not agree to her wishes, then she will wake all the dead from the underworld, which is where her sister Erish Kigal lives. So then she would descend herself down into the lower regions and release all the spirits of the dead from it, which would just shatter the whole foundation of the universe and everything. So finally he agrees, and then he releases the Bull of Heavens, which is also like a symbol of Taurus, with Venus, which happens to have Venus overhead. But Gilgamesh slays the bull, as most of the divine men of the ancient ageless wisdom have done. But the ending is that Gilgamesh was still a mortal man, and he thus died anyways, regardless. But what it reveals is that Ishtar, the divine feminine, the spirit of Venus, the morning star, has the ability to traverse between the different realms, for it carries the stream of light and life downward and upward. It's like the boat, the great boat that can swim across many streams. If you are familiar with the alchemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, who is it that carries them to the different lands? It is Venus, Lady Venus, the morning star. So could she play the most important role in our own redemption? Could she be the most powerful form of the Trinity? And are we the ones as humans to redeem her and rescue her from her great sacrifice of love, so that we may continue to live on? I guess we'll have to continue on to understand, won't we? Does that cover the mysteries? I was going to do the Egyptian, but I guess I'll go ahead and do the Egyptian. Osiris. Basically, Osiris is the O. He's the unknown father, the one about nobody can see or know. But through that very principle of nothingness, we do contact him and communicate with him. So he's the father, the first ray of will aspect. So him being the positive polarity was slayed by his brother, his polarized opposite negative polarity, and thus the cycle or the great magnetism was established. But who was it that saved him? It was obviously his wife, Isis. She redeemed him. She gathered all his broken fragments, which are basically like fragments of light, which broke off of the one eternal source of life and light, which is obviously it's Isis. Obviously it all belonged to Isis in her wholesome form, and pieced them back together so that she could produce a son. The second ray love wisdom, who was to redeem them both. This son in between them both, in between the unknown and the all known, his mother, or his father and mother, was the one who redeemed them both, because he was the equilibrator and balance of the two. So he carried his mother's spirit with him and triumphed over Set, and became Ra, the most exalted, highest form of the sun, or the solar body, and thus redeemed his unknown father, of whom he finally saw as a reflection of the great I am presence, if you will, or the great sense of self, which is only known through its own absence. So that also connects. Who was it that saved the day? The divine feminine, the morning star, the Isis, planet Venus. So could this all be related, and could this all answer the question of the mystery of our existence and immortality? I guess we'll have to continue this great series, the Esoteric Seven. We have not even broke through into the actual seven yet. We were still talking about the Trinity. So the Trinity are not the first three of the material seven, or physical seven. They're only the framework or the archetypes of the first three of the seven, if that makes sense. So, but the first three up here, the invisible realm, obviously have to manifest at the lowest point in the physical realm, which would be the first three chakras. So we'll get into that next time. The first three chakras, the root would be more like the active will, or the will power aspect. Then the sacral region would be what is it? I'll just have to get into that later. But it basically results in the flipping of the entire chakra system and the seven rays, as well as the seven kingdoms, the seven spiritual layers, sub-layers, all that stuff. We'll get into it next time. So if you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe, and there will be much, much more. This is still in the early stages, so we have a great series to go on from here. Have a great day.